So, James, we are so glad you are on with us today. And I bet for your sake, you're kind of glad to have another Harlan to talk with, right?
Of course. Although I wonder if there will be a gloved catch during this period.
It's funny. We actually had my dad on the podcast. And then recently we were talking with the NFL Films crew, and he was talking about when he was a ball boy with the Packers, when you were a player. And he said you would give the ball boys a tough time. Do you remember any of those stories?
The stories don't have to be accurate to be good.
No,
And
that's true.
I am positive that I did not give the ball boys a hard time. If anything, I probably engaged with them more than anybody else.
Well, I know he speaks so fondly of that time. That was a lot of fun. And then how ironic to grow up, both of you in your careers after your time with the Bills and coaching. Now you're in media and you all are calling Packer preseason games together. What's it like going back to do those games at Lambeau? I saw you tweeted the other day, your retired number forever immortalized in the stadium. That must be a pretty cool feeling.
It is a kick, but I will tell you this: when I hear Kevin Harlan doing a basketball game, I get the immediate urge to text him because I just you feel that connection when there's somebody that you've worked with, somebody that you're friends with, especially, and they are doing these marquee events. It's just hard not to want to reach out and say, "Hey, what's up?"
Is your dad like that in real life? Does he like call what he's doing in the house with that much fervor?
No, in fact, he has 4 kids, 3 of them are girls, and we laugh sometimes at the dinner table. We're all talking a mile a minute, and he's been quiet for about 30 minutes. And we'll say, well, Dad, what do you think? And he's like, I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about. You talk so fast, all that. And James, you're a father and grandfather. Do you ever feel like that you kind of play second fiddle to your wife, Beverly?
Well, I remember when my kids were young, and now they're all in their 30s. But we used to play a game that I really enjoyed when I was driving, and it was called the quiet game. And we wanted to see how long the kids could be quiet in the car because I'm not a big talker, even though I talk for a living. And like your dad, he's probably not just a big talker naturally, but he enjoys the events.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are that type of person and you're not a talkative person, you actually enjoy a little bit of quiet now and then.
Well, James, I know you're a very hands-on father and grandfather. I just saw you last week. You're showing me pictures of the grandkids. Such a beautiful family. What's your advice to Yannis as a first-time dad now to a little girl?
Oh, now that could take on more than just one segment because what you really want to do, you want to be able to cast yourself into the future. Anytime there's a little hiccup, when the diaper explodes, when the milk gets teetered over, and say, what a wonderful moment that actually was 18, 19 years ago, because you don't get those moments over. And so you want to cherish every moment that you really can as a father.
Yeah, I've realized as a father, there's a lot of audibles you got to call. You have a play, things are supposed to go a certain way, and the diaper explodes, and you really got to go off the cuff. You were talking about the silent treatment in the car, seeing how long the kids.
No, not the silent treatment, the silent game.
The silent game. I'm sorry.
It's a game because
Yes.
you want to challenge your kids. That you don't get to talk until you see a yellow Volkswagen Beetle. And you know how rare those are nowadays.
Very rare. Very rare. On the field, how much talking did you do? How much trash talking goes on between the cornerback and the wide receiver when you're in game?
I think there's a lot more going on now because I think the kids who are playing now are much more aware that they are on camera, that they are, because even within their own stadium, they're going to be on camera on the replay. So when I played, that was a lot different. Television didn't really factor into how we played the game. And now it does with instant replays, with reviews, with challenges. Everybody can see almost every play. You see player after a play's over, gazing up at the scoreboard, looking to see what the last play was. Was the blocking assignment right? Did I run my pattern right? So they are acutely aware of what's going on. And they do tend to chirp at one another a lot more than we did in my day.
What else do you feel like is a big difference from your day to kids now? And I say kids, they're grown men in the NFL,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
but there's so much different off the field. What do you feel like translates most on the field when you look at the differences in time?
Well, I think you wanted to get to know players. When we went back to Green Bay this last week, I went by my old neighbor's house,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually got to go into the house that I used to live in. And
Wow.
it's been remodeled about 3 or 4 times. So, the butts and goads of it were kind of the same, but everything else was different. And I think it's the same way in football. The game is the same. You're playing on the same size field, different things like that. But the rules have been tweaked just enough from the late 90s to the way the game is played now. And I even played in the late 70s. So when you even look at the players, a big offensive lineman used to be a 265-pound guy. Now that's a small tight end. So just the physicality of the game is different. And like you said, we get to know the players a little more off the field through their own social media. So you have a kind of a feeling of what they're like as people and what their thoughts are about.
What was it like for you playing in Green Bay? I mean, were you prepared for that level of cold coming from where you came from?
Yeah, I came from Southern California. And so what I had to do is I had to redefine what the word cold meant. Because as a kid from California, cold is when it's 50 degrees. Right. And it's going to be cold and you got to bundle up and do all this kind of stuff. And 50-degree day in Green Bay is a reason to wear shorts. So it was a lot different. But I really took it as a badge of honor to try and play well in the cold weather. And I remember the very first cold practice we had. We were standing out on the old AstroTurf field outside, and my fingers were just numb. I didn't have on gloves. And Bart Starr handed me one of those little tiny hand heaters. And he said, "Here, this will help." And I remember thinking to myself, no, it's not helping.
What would be helping is if we move this stadium to Southern California. That would help.
That might have helped a little bit.
James, you brought up Bart Starr. That's, as big a Packer player as there is in history. What are some of your memories of him as you think about your time together?
Oh, I have so many memories about Bart. I even have like a little placard in my den that Bart and Cherry gave us after we got married.
Wow.
And to paraphrase, it says, "Do not look for perfection in your mate, for you will not find it." And it goes on and on and on. It says a couple other real rosy things. But so he's somebody I think about every day. Mm-hmm. And I also try and pattern a little bit of my life over one of his other sayings, because he said, you can judge the true measure of a man by how he treats someone who can do nothing for him. And when I say that, I still get chills, because I can remember sitting in the St. Norbert's auditorium during training camp when he said that. And he was relaying it to something else that was going on, because we were keeping the locker room a little messy, and we weren't throwing trash in the trash can. We weren't throwing the laundry in the laundry bins. And he said, you can tell the true measure of a man by how he treats someone who can do nothing for him. And that just still rings in my soul.
Kind of on that note, in a nostalgia mindset, every year going to Canton for the Hall of Fame induction must be a very special part of the year for you. What were your impressions this year?
Well, this year, because it was doubled up, you had lost 2020, which was a huge class of 20 people. And then the 2021 class was going to be 8 people. So now you have to account for 28 people. And not only 28 people, but their family and their friends, their entourages, the clubs that come to see them. So during the course of the weekend, it seemed like things were going fast forward. Mm-hmm. You would see somebody who was associated with a player or a coach that was going in, or an administrator, and go, "Okay, you're here to see that person." And they go, "No, I'm actually here to see so-and-so." And so it was just this ball of confusion, but it was a good ball of confusion.
Do you have to have a great memory to be an NFL player? Because there's so many guys on the team. Have you ever run into any problems remembering anyone who's on your team?
Without a doubt. And not even that. For me, having been a player, a coach, and a broadcaster, there's a blurred line between, was that guy my teammate? Did I coach him, or did I just call games that he played in? And there have been a couple players that the answer to that, yes, all three. So I've had teammates, I've had guys that I ended up coaching who were also my teammates. And it was funny when I was coaching with the San Diego Chargers. Every week you give your players a test on different assignments and things like that. And then I give them an oddball test. And I told them, on this San Diego Chargers team, there are two players that were my teammates. Who were they? So they start scrambling around. They find the media guide. Steve Christie, who's a kicker for the Chargers, was also the kicker in Buffalo and was a kicker while I was there in Buffalo. They can't figure out the next person. I said, you guys have to figure it out. I'm not going to tell you. Weeks go by. Months go by. Finally, they're going, tell us who the last person was because we cannot figure it out. We've looked. We've talked to guys around the locker room. Nobody knows. I go, okay, Junior Seau. They go, wait a minute. You didn't play for the Chargers. No. The last Pro Bowl that I played in, Junior Seau was on my team. We were teammates.
Yeah.
There you have it.
They didn't think about the Pro Bowl.
They did not think about that one.
Oh, that's funny. Speaking of all your Pro Bowl trips, 8 times named a Pro Bowler, who were some players that you never got a chance to play with on a team outside of there that really left an impression on you? Who's someone who just made you laugh, made you think about the game different, something like that?
Well, the quarterbacks were always front and center. And the very first Pro Bowl that I played in, and I still get a kick out of saying this, my 2 quarterbacks were Roger Staubach and Archie Manning.
Wow.
The other Manning, not Peyton or Eli, but the other Manning. So that was always pretty neat. And I remember one trip back from Aloha Stadium back to the Hilton Hawaiian Village, which is about a 30-minute bus ride. I sat down next to Joe Theismann, and I remember saying, "Hey, Joe," and then he proceeded to talk for the next 30 minutes. He has the gift of gab where he just kept going and going, and he was talking about all his future plans and what he planned to do, and you know what? He accomplished most of them.
What are you looking for this upcoming season? Who are some of your favorites going in? Some of your favorites at your position?
Well, when you say favorites, all of a sudden the former teams that you played for crop up, and this week in the preseason when we're filming this, Buffalo and Green Bay are playing.
Yeah.
Naturally, those are 2 teams that are right on that Super Bowl cusp that are expect to be at least in the AFC and NFC championship games. So that would be great. Another former team, the Raiders, are opening up a brand new stadium. And it's interesting, their stadium last year was brand new, but Mark Davis, the owner, decided if the fans can't go, I'm not even going to the games. And so they're starting out on Monday Night Football this year, and so a lot of excitement there. In terms of players, there are just so many. And the thing that, especially from my position, everybody wants to know who's the best receiver. And it varies ever so slightly from week to week. It's kind of like the PGA, Professional Golf Association. The number 1 ranked player in the world fluctuates depending upon what place he was in and this and that. So if you really want, there are probably 10 really great receivers. More so than there were in the 70s and 80s and 90s because teams just throw the ball so much. They're so proficient at throwing it, and people practice it a lot more than they ever used to.
What makes a great receiver? You always hear about the prototype, 6'3", 6'4", what he can run, but then you see guys like Julian Edelman who aren't that prototype, who put up big numbers, who are very resourceful. What is it that makes a great receiver?
So in part of your question, you kind of answered it because you said big numbers. And not only do you put up big numbers, but you put up important numbers. And in addition to that, the other team cannot stop you. So I used to say it was the 4 S's. Let me see if I got this right. Size, speed, strength, and skill. Yeah, 4. So I was right. And so you can have guys of different sizes, different speeds. A guy that comes off the tongue first is probably Devontae Adams, because he doesn't have a Robin to go along with him that is of significance. The second receivers for the Green Bay Packers are all decent players, but they don't have a second receiver who's catching 65 or 70 passes. It's Devontae Adams, who's about 120. And so if you're the defense and you go into the game and you go, we have to stop Devontae Adams. And corner after corner, linebacker after linebacker, safety after safety sliding in that direction, they can't stop Devontae Adams. So is it Devontae Adams is unstoppable, or is it unstoppable where you can't stop Aaron Rodgers from getting him the ball? So it's that combination between the two. And when you mentioned Julian Edelman, he had Tom Brady throwing to him, and you couldn't stop Tom Brady from throwing the ball to Julian Edelman. So you look around the league, and there are a lot of guys like that who can dominate and dictate the course of a game.
James, sticking with the Packers, and you brought up Aaron Rodgers, I think players from your generation have a hard time grasping
how much money they're making.
The money they're making, the demands they're making, the kind of hot and cold. Recently, Aaron Rodgers said he was 50-50 on even playing this season. What was your take on the whole thing as someone so close with the Packers and covering them this preseason?
I watched it kind of develop, and I knew that there was a drop dead day. Mm-hmm. And that drop dead day was kind of like when training camp started. And so everything that you were talking about, you had to drop at that point, and you had to resolve it, because I really believe that Aaron Rodgers wanted to play, mm-hmm. and has a desire to play and loves playing. And as good a host as he was on Jeopardy, I think he realized that could wait.
Yeah.
Something like that could wait. In football, normally once you walk away, you don't get to come back. Occasionally a guy gets to come back and comes back a year later and he finds out that, I should have just stayed retired. So for Aaron Rodgers, he has this other guy out there who's running the ultra marathon in Tom Brady. And I think Tom is Tom 44 this year? Or is he 43 right now? We've kind of forgotten how old Tom Brady is, because it's not part of the discussion. Once he turned 40, and then after he continued to play past 40, you go, well, maybe he can play until he's 50. Mm-hmm. The rules allow for quarterbacks not to get hit as much or as often, but they still get hit. And for Aaron Rodgers, I'm just glad that he's back in uniform, and we get to watch him play for 1, 2, 3, 4 more years.
What do you think has to happen this season in Green Bay for him to stay longer?
I think for them to back up the Brinks truck a little more, and I think it's money.
Yeah,
and a little bit of money is power. There's been some discussion that he didn't have, say on who's on the roster, and I can totally understand that from a general manager's perspective or from a head coach's perspective, because players get attached to other players for different reasons. Sometimes it's because the player's a good player. Sometimes it's because he's a good friend. Mm-hmm. He's a good fishing buddy or something like that. And you want that guy around. And sometimes, they have to make tough decisions. The coaches and the general manager do.
See, I don't think it's money. I think what you said, he wanted more say. I think he was blindsided by the LaFleur hire, which seems crazy to me because it fits him so well. He's an offensive coach. He's a young guy. I feel like the Packers are doing as much as they can to make Aaron comfortable. But as a Packer fan myself, it's just tough to watch the whole thing unfold. So the point of my question was, is it Super Bowl or bust, do you think, to get Aaron to want to stay in Green Bay?
I think it's going to be hard to duplicate the last 2 years where they've been 13-3. They've been an offensive juggernaut. Because so much is out of control.
Yep.
Last year, the Kansas City Chiefs were by far the best team during the regular season. They lose both their offensive tackles before the Super Bowl, and they look like a team does during the preseason where they can't protect the quarterback. So if you can stay healthy, if everybody can stay healthy, you can have a chance to do those things. But it's hard to replicate year after year.
Yannis, did you know you were on a Packer Home podcast?
I did not. Yeah, I feel like I'm I feel like I should have a cheese head on right now.
You look good in a cheese head.
Yeah. It's James, I got a question for you, man. Everyone is obsessed.
Go ahead, Yannis.
There we go. Yeah.
Gotta look around and find
I got to ask you this question. Everyone nowadays is obsessed with GOAT lists, greatest of all time list. Wide receiver. If you had to pick 5 all time, who are your 5 all time greatest wide receivers?
Well, see, the toughest thing is that the receiver who I put number 1, I've never seen him play. I've seen some grainy footage of him, and that would be Don Hudson.
Oh.
Because when Don Hudson played, there was one season, who was the, and I'm drawing a blank on him now, but the Bears had Sid Luckman, a Hall of Fame quarterback. There was a year that Don Hudson had more receiving yards than Sid Luckman had passing yardage. So transfer that to today's game. There's a receiver who just had 5,000 yards in receptions during the year. How good would he be? I mean, what would he look like? He'd look like Don Johnson running through a bunch of Kevin Harts. But right. So you take Don Hudson and you put him number 1 on the list because he kind of invented the passing game. And then I think you really have to look at guys who played before the Super Bowl era, and just because the game was different. They didn't have sticky gloves. They didn't have field turf to play on. So it's different. So I hate doing it. So since you're not there to twist my arm, I'm not going to do it.
Right, there you go.
I would be number 6.
Hey.
You can put yourself number 1 too. I mean,
no, I just put myself at number 6. Just like when they had the 100 greatest NFL players, I was 101. I'm pretty sure about that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's funny. Well, this weekend you are calling Packers at Bills, your 2 former teams you've brought up.
Yes.
If it were a regular season game that mattered, who would you cheer for?
Yes, I would. Oh, you said who? I thought you said would I cheer?
Yeah.
Am I broadcasting the game,
You're
or
not
am I?
broadcasting.
What am I doing? Is the game just going on?
Yep, you're not broadcasting.
I don't know. I feel like I know Aaron Rodgers a little more than I know Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was funny. The first time I ran into Aaron Rodgers off the field was here in San Diego.
Really?
And he had played. He was in about his 5th year, and I saw him. He was at LaDainian Tomlinson's golf tournament, and I'm looking at him going, that guy looks familiar, because he had only started 1 or 2 years at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, I think that's I'm not sure. I think that's Aaron Rodgers. And I went over and I said, hi, I'm James Lofton. He goes, hi, I'm Aaron Rodgers. I go, oh, of course. I forgot that you lived out here. So, those associations don't go away easily.
Mm-hmm.
I have been invited by the Packers twice to announce players at the NFL draft. And I am 2 for 2. And when I say 2 for 2, we're talking about grand slams, out of the park, longest home run ever hit.
I don't know.
Elton Jenkins.
Oh, yeah.
Elton Jenkins.
Mississippi State.
And Devontae Adams.
Wow. That's pretty good.
So,
grand slams.
Knocked it out of the park. I don't know why the Packers do not have me do it every year.
Seriously. Yeah, you need to talk to him about that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
This is always something that has interested me, and I've never asked any player or former player this question, but especially
briefs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I took you as a boxer brief guy.
That used to always be the question, the briefs or boxers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
When the game comes down to it, right? Yes. When it comes down to a final play and it's on the foot of a field goal kicker.
Yes.
How does that feel? Like, do you feel like you want to be out there to win the game, or do you feel like it's anticlimactic that it ends up being on a guy who doesn't play the whole game and then comes in and determines the game?
But you know what? Nobody plays the whole game.
Good point.
Everybody's out there in their particular time and doing their thing. And I was really fortunate. Early in my career, we had Jan Stenerud come to Green Bay. And he came there, and he was there during the 1982 season. Maybe he was there as early as 81 and might have stayed to 83 or 84. But here's a guy who played in the 60s. And so when he came to Green Bay, he was already like older than everybody else on the team. And I remember we ran wind sprints after practice where you run over and back, and you basically ran 200 yards. And you run about 4 of those. Well, Jan Stenerud ran with the receivers. And he beat half the guys. The other guys would say, oh, well, we've been practicing all day, and he's just coming over to run. But he had been a ski jumper. He was a terrific athlete. So right then and there, the thing about, them not being good athletes, well, you go out and try and kick the ball. That's an athletic skill.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never, looked at the kicker as a guy who's less than anybody else on the roster.
Wow. Okay. James, I have just one more for you as we look back at your whole career.
What? I got plenty of time.
Oh, okay. We love hearing that.
You get one question to look back on my whole career.
Yeah, that's it.
This has got to be a doozy then.
No, and I want to focus on the coaching part, that whole chapter after you played. I think as the season begins, and we had Ron Jaworski on last week, and he said he was a proponent that no coach should have been fired last year because of all the difficulties that COVID presented. And I can definitely appreciate that. What do fans not know about the coaching carousel? Because I've seen glimpses of it from my background covering the league and being around my dad and my grandpa. It's a very tough gig on the person, on the individual, on the family. Coaching is a tough line of work. What do fans need to know going into a new football season about what it's like to be a coach?
I think that they work a lot longer hours than you really could imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to my first coaching interview, and it was right after I retired, and I didn't take the job. And Ted Marcher-Broda was the offensive coordinator. Well, I take that back. He was the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
Mm.
And he had been my offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills. And Ted, I just love, he's kind of like your grandfather. He's soft-spoken, very nice. And he would always, whenever he talked to me, he'd go, Jim, I mean James, I do mean James. He said, we don't work long hours here. He said, Monday through Thursday, we work from 6 to 11. And Friday, you're home by dinner by 8 o'clock. And I went, did he just say 6 to 11?
6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And Friday, you're home by dinner by 8 o'clock.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, ooh.
Yeah.
So I didn't take the job. I did take the job almost 10 years later.
Wow.
And it was interesting. When I had a chance to interview for head coaching jobs, and you go in and you give the person that you're talking to your schedule. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I said, I have some unique views about the hours that coaches work. And I said, Monday after a game, we're out of the office at 6 o'clock. I don't want to see the coaches back in the office until 10 a.m. Tuesday morning. We'll work until 10 p.m. that night. If we can't come up with a game plan for our next opponent, and a game plan that is really 85% repetitive, because you're just adding a few things that are specific to the team that you're about to face. Mm-hmm. If we can't come up with a game plan in 12 hours, we don't need to be coaching.
Wow.
And the person looked at me, sucked their teeth a little bit, goes, I don't like that. I want to have my coaches in their offices, and I want them there burning the midnight oil.
Wow.
And I said, when you burn the midnight oil, all you do is run out of oil. And so I really believe that coaches need to be fresh. And I see my friends who are assistant coaches now late in the season in October and November, and they look like they haven't slept since June. So it's a tough job. And you sacrifice a lot of time being away from your family. My daughter, my youngest, who was really at home when I was doing all the coaching. The boys were kind of off in college. Said, you just never got to meet any of my friends. And
Wow.
that was like, hitting below the belt, but it was honest.
Well, I'm glad you answered that. I think a lot of people are so tough on coordinators and position coaches,
Yeah.
especially because they don't know what all goes on behind the scenes. So thanks for answering that. James Lofton, Hall of Famer. This was a true treat. You can catch him on CBS, NFL Sundays, Westwood One. That's where we've gotten to share the airwaves together. That was a lot of fun. And doing Packer preseason right now on Packer TV Network. And some of them are airing on NFL Network. You can keep up with him on Twitter as well. James, thanks so much for joining us.
I thought you were going to say you can't get rid of him.
You also can't get rid of him.
Well, Yannis was probably going to say that, so I said it before he did.
Hey, well, you said you got to be fresh, so we can keep you here all night. Like if you were still coaching, we can keep going and bring the midnight oil.
Yeah, that's not how we work.
You guys are great. You guys are a great pair together.
Thank you. That was so much fun.
Thank you, my friend. Tell Beverly we say hi. Thank you.